I just really wanted to start with an opening from an IMAGINiT perspective on the relationship that we have forged with Twinmotion, with Epic Games. IMAGINiT as a company, historically we're very selective on who we partner with. If you go through and look at just partnerships on our website or things like that, there's not dozens and dozens of logos and things that are out there. So we take it very, very seriously, and we're really excited with the possibilities of what we've got here with Twinmotion and the partnership we have available. Personally, as we're going through some different things, the attention to detail that is inside the software is phenomenal. As we're looking at things, if you look at the various marketing videos and slicks that you see from different items, you're looking at that and saying, yeah, I'll never be able to create a video or presentation like that. I would say that that is absolutely not the case. When we're talking about the idea of presenting a concept, presenting something to your clients, to your stakeholders, to understand what's really going on, it's an incredibly powerful tool that can do wonderful graphics for you. Based on that Unreal Engine, just the productivity, efficiency. Case in point, there's a customer of ours that we were doing some work with, where initially we were thinking that we'd take some things and go into a different rendering and animation program and create a video for this customer. And we were thinking about how many dozens and dozens and 50, 60, 100 plus hours that it'd take us to complete something. And we got a better presentation of what is happening inside their building faster than it would have ever been through some of these other methods that we were looking at. And from the client perspective, the interactive nature of what we were able to go through with them with this idea of Twinmotion, it resonated. There were places where we're just, hey, here's a video, here's a snapshot, and there was glossy eyes and virtual eyes in this case. But then when we got into this interactive mode, everybody just started perking up and saying, yeah, okay, now can you? And it just the energy level in this meeting rose dramatically. So it's an incredible communication tool that we feel is going to be of immense value to everybody, no matter what end of the spectrum you're on, whether you're on the building owner facilities management side, you're on the design and engineering end. There's a lot of different possibilities that we can have through here. So that's really just the overall importance, the intent that we've got here, the excitement that we've got from our IMAGINiT side, that as a tool to help out with that communication, that design charrette process, any number of different things we can go through in here. It's a wonderful tool that we're excited to be a part of. With that being said, I'd like to turn it over to John and let him talk about things, get through into a presentation. And over to you, John.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be here along with Daryl from Epic Games and help kind of kick off our partnership with IMAGINiT. So with that, let me give you a little bit back on the Epic Games. We were founded almost 30 years ago. We're a global company with 35 closed offices worldwide at this point. We're all working from home. A little over 2,100 employees, and most of us, if you not personally, maybe you have a family member, may know Epic Games because we have a very popular game called Fortnite. And so a lot of people think of us as, the guys who created Fortnite. And so we operate really in two major divisions. We have a publishing division and a software division. And the publishing division creates some pretty cool games. The most popular one these days is a game called Fortnite. And the software development division, we are the guys who actually support game developers other than Epic, and literally thousands of enterprise customers, non-game commercial customers. We think we're unique in the game engine business because being a publisher and also a software licensor, not only does it kind of provide us great revenue opportunities for being a publisher, but it also causes us to really be good on the software side because we've got this never-ending iteration cycle to keep our software on the cutting edge because we're using it for something as massive as Fortnite. Let me. I guess I should mention for those who don't know, the underlying technology here is what we call Unreal Engine, and this technology, which drives things like Fortnite, also drives Twinmotion. And just to give you a quick sense of the scope of kind of scalability around Unreal Engine, when we look at Fortnite particularly, we are actually serving over 350 million players and close to 11 million concurrently with Fortnite. And it's across platform code, which means it supports a lot of different hardware platforms, like for instance the Xbox and PS4 and iOS for Apple. But it does that function by providing a consistent use across all of those platforms. So it's a pretty massive scale. And as you can imagine, as certainly the United States has gone into a work from home mode, there's a lot of people that are playing Fortnite, believe it or not, Monday through Friday, as opposed to just maybe on the weekends. And we're constantly raising our eyebrows at the amount of players that we're supporting on a concurrent basis. And I guess the reason I tell you all that is this kind of scale and this kind of complexity, I think, is important in the AEC space, particularly around some of the larger models that I'm sure some of you work in. In our enterprise space, particularly, we focus on the AEC world, manufacturing and design, particularly in automotive. There's a lot of Unreal Engine in film and TV, and one of my personal favorite recent projects for Unreal Engine was The Mandalorian. And I would encourage you to, if you're a Mandalorian fan, go out to Google and Google Mandalorian and Unreal Engine. There's some neat videos about what we did in virtual production. And then, as you can imagine, training and simulation is another big, commercial enterprise focus for a company like ours. Any environment that you want to create and then use in a virtual reality type of immersive mode, Unreal Engine is really the right platform. How we got to Twinmotion. So Twinmotion was developed by a software company in Europe who built this visualization tool on top of Unreal Engine. And about a year and a half ago, Unreal Engine decided we were going to buy this software, and it was going to help us push more broadly into the AEC space. So we've just released, quote unquote, our own version of Twinmotion 2020 back in March. I'm pretty sure most of you who signed up for this webinar and also are attending have a pretty good idea of what Twinmotion is from a high level, but I'm gonna cover down a little bit on what is Twinmotion and give you a little bit of information about Epic Games and Unreal Engine, and then I'll turn it over to Daryl for really the meat of the presentation. As Joe said, we're proud of the visualization that the output that Twinmotion is able to provide to our customers. Technically we call it a real-time architectural visualization and virtual reality immersion solution. That's a really fancy way of saying you can communicate design intent crystal clear with Twinmotion. And one of the things that I personally found amazing about Twinmotion is it really is easy to learn. When I was first coming on to work on the Twinmotion project, my manager said, "Why don't you go pull down Twinmotion and call me back in the day and tell me what you think?" And I was kind of a little nervous about doing it because I certainly didn't spend a lot of time working with the tool in a long time. And I was blown away at the ease of use, all of the supporting YouTube videos that help you stay up and current with all the latest tips and tricks. And really our community is amazing. The users are very active on the Twinmotion community. And if there's not an answer already posted up there, it's usually a couple days before some other user says, hey, this is how I solved the problem. So it's a really cool community. It's a really awesome, easy to use tool, and you really put a smile on your face when you see the kind of output and the quality of the visualizations. And very excited to have Daryl show you kind of the highlights of Twinmotion. And with that, I'll turn it over to Daryl.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for the nice introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to be spending about the next 20 minutes walking you through a presentation that will give you a pretty good overview of what it's like to work through a project inside of Twinmotion. And this is the project that we're going to be working with today. So this is finished output of it. You can output several types of media with Twinmotion. You can output stills, obviously you can output videos, as well as Twinmotion presenter files, which are standalone executables that you can share with your customers or clients. So they will not need to have Twinmotion installed to experience the interactive presentation that you author for them inside of Twinmotion. And this presentation is based on Revit data. What we're seeing here is highlighting several of the new features that were inside of Twinmotion 2020. We put a lot of work into the visual fidelity. So here we are inside of Revit, and this is the main piece of architecture, or one of the main structures that we're going to be working with. And the process of communicating with Twinmotion is very simple. Just click on the export button and you could save a file out, or you can click the See in Twinmotion button, which creates a direct link. So we'll just go ahead and add that into a new project. And here you can see the geometry that's been imported in. Now it automatically assigns materials based on the materials that you had placed in Revit. So it adds on higher fidelity, better quality visuals based on that kind of lookup table. So what we're going to do is we're going to import in some more geometry, and we're going to bring in a file from 3ds Max. So we're just bringing in an FBX file to set the context of this a bit more in depth, give it a little bit more geometry. So the bottom dock is your main user interface element, and then to the right end of this, you have the ability to adjust your location. And this can be set positionally. You can also set the month and time and day. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of the background and just have the sky system inside of it. So this is a procedurally generated sky that we've now turned on. Now to the right is another panel, and this allows you to look at the scene graph, so basically the hierarchy of your geometry that's been imported in, as well as some statistics, so your frame rate, how much GPU usage, the polygon count, the amount of memory that you're going to be using inside of the project. To the left is another main user interface element, and this is your library. So this is going to have thousands of materials and objects that you can use to start to populate and dress your scene. So for this example, the first thing we want to do is start to add in some higher fidelity materials. So we're just going to drag and drop a water onto the water plane out there. You can see it's got a nice animation on top of it. And then we're going to start to add in some grasses. So there's literally thousands of different materials that you can use. And if you want, you can also add your own texture maps onto these materials. So we're just going to continue to add a few more materials onto this environment. So we're going to kind of zoom in here and add on some man-made asphalt. Now, any of these materials have a variety of parameters that are exposed in that bottom dock. So in this example, we're just going to scale that down to look a little bit more appropriate. And we'll jump back up and grab a few of the metals. So I'm going to just put some aluminum on the roof, and then we'll kind of move over here to these other pieces of geometry and add onto that some titanium tiles. So we're just kind of drag this out. So it's just a simple process of dragging and dropping to go ahead and make these relationships. Of course, any of the attributes are editable at any given time. So you can see we can adjust the scale. You can also click the More button to get into some more detailed movements. So if you wanted to non-uniformly scale something or rotate it, you have those options. At any time, if you want, you can use numerical inputs. So now that we've got some materials assigned and it's starting to look a little bit better, let's go ahead and start talking about vegetation. So vegetation's been an area of focus for 2020. We've put a lot of work into creating really beautiful trees and landscape vegetation. So there's a variety of different objects that we can drag and drop out. And again, it's a simple process of just literally dragging and dropping. So we'll put a pine tree inside of here. And one thing that's really nice about these, as I zoom in on them, you'll notice that they have a little bit of animation on them. The wind kind of moves them around, and they also have the ability to interact with the sky system in a very nice, realistic manner. So you get that nice kind of backlighting or subsurface scattering kind of penetrating through the needles of that pine tree. Now, another thing that's interesting about the vegetation is we have the ability to adjust the trees based on the life of them. So I'm going to drop down 3 different trees here, and each time I drop it down, they're slightly different in size. And as I scale this down, you can see the young trees' branches grow in a different way than the medium tree, which is in the middle, or the adult tree, which is on the right-hand side. So every tree that we have in here has this growth mechanism built into it, which is really pretty awesome. So it's not just changing the size of them or the scale of them, it's actually changing the way the branches grow based on the age of the tree. So there's a couple different ways of adding trees. Obviously, dragging and dropping is one way. Another way of adding trees into your scene is to use a paintbrush workflow. So here I've gone ahead and added in just a simple spruce tree. And as I start to paint this tree around, you can see that I'm getting a visual representation of the areas that I've painted on. That's kind of the pulsating color that we're seeing. And I can always go back and adjust the density. So it's a very non-destructive workflow. If I want to, in that same painted area, I can start to add in more trees. So we'll just add in this fern. And the fern is actually interesting because this is derived using Quixel-based assets. So Quixel's another company that Autodesk, or another company that Epic has purchased, and it allows you to create these very high fidelity images. And you can see it works in a layering metaphor here. So as I start to play with these densities, I can really fine tune and dial this in to look exactly the way I want, which is pretty awesome. So a third way of adding vegetation is to use the scatter. So scatter is going to allow me to basically start to use a paint bucket tool to flood fill large areas of terrain. So we'll just grab the spruce, I'll grab my little paint bucket, and I'll just start clicking on this. And every time I click, it's going to go through and add in more and more trees. And you can see as I kind of move around here and rotate around the environment, that we've added trees across the whole environment. And this is one of the things that Twinmotion does an amazing job of, is dealing with massive amounts of data very, very quickly, still maintaining that super fast frame rate. So another way of bringing trees in or working with trees is to do a search and replace. So I'm bringing in a dummy file. So this is just going to be an FBX file that's going to have some place locators for me. And what we want to do is we want to replace all of these cubes with a certain species of tree. So all I have to do is highlight the cubes, jump over into my library, then drag down into that lower dock the tree that I want to replace, and then just click the start replace, and it'll go through and update those trees or replace those cubes with updated versions of those trees. So we'll do the same thing for the spruce trees. Again, drop it into the dock and just click the start button. And of course, at any time, I can go back and give them a little bit more size if they weren't exactly the scale that I wanted. So that's basically the workflow for working with vegetation inside of Twinmotion 2020. So the next thing that we want to do is talk about this parking lot and how we can start to populate this with some vehicles. So we're going to do a similar workflow that we just did before. First, I'm going to make this a little bit darker. It's a little light, that road there. So I'll just grab that material and drop down the intensity, and that scale looks a little off too. So let's just clean that up a bit. All right, so with that done, the next thing that we want to do is import in another set of helpers to let us place a car. So in this example, I'm going to have it maintain the hierarchy. So by saying keep hierarchy, it's going to give me an individual transform for each node. And this is important because it's going to allow us to put unique cars onto each one of those cubes. So similar to what we did with the tree, we're going to highlight them in the scene window on the right-hand side. We're going to go back and click replace. And when we do that, we can jump back up into the library, go into the vehicle section, and we'll just drag in here several different cars. So in this example, we'll grab a couple of cars, an SUV, and maybe a wagon. And now when I hit start replace, it will randomly place all of those cars. And of course, at any time, if you don't like the color of a given vehicle, you can go back and modify that or change it. So you have lots of creative flexibility throughout the process as you're working inside of Twinmotion. So the next thing we want to do is we want to have cars driving down the road. And this is easily done by just creating a vehicle path. So this allows me to grab a pen tool and simply start dropping down spline points. So I'm making a Bezier curve of where I want these vehicles to basically exist or travel. I'll just kind of click this a few more points. And with that done, we'll just go ahead and hit the return key. And as soon as I do that, we have animated vehicles in our Twinmotion file. It's that easy. It's very, very fast. And like the trees, we always have the ability to go back there and dial in the density or adjust a variety of parameters. Another thing that we can do is we can actually also go back and adjust the overall position points of that spline. So I'm just going to kind of push the road over a little bit to the right there. And as soon as I let go, you can see that it updates and takes those changes into effect. So now we've got this looking pretty sweet. I got some cars kind of coming into the parking lot, and you get a good sense of how fast and easy it is for me to do this type of work. So the next thing that we want to do is let's add some people into the environment. So we'll go back into the library, into the characters section, and I'm going to just grab a few groups of people and just simply position them. The people are high quality, they're animated, as you can see. We have static people as well as cutouts if you want to use a variety of different looks for your visualization. And at any time you can go in here and make modifications. So if you don't like the animation that they're doing, you can change them around. There's some that are kind of ridiculous, like dancing, but you never know, you might need that. Let's go back to idle. And if you don't like the colors, you can always go and select any of these unique people and change the presets. So lots of flexibility, lots of creative freedom built into all the different smart assets inside of Twinmotion. So that's pretty fun. All right, so the next thing that we want to look at, let's just clear up our UI a bit, is the weather system. So weather is really, this is pretty amazing. So this is one of the things that's so brilliant about Twinmotion. All the assets are what we call smart assets. They have functionality inherently built into them, like the weather system. So you can see that everything interacts with the weather. The ground gets puddles. The cars have a speck that looks like it's being driven by the rain. As we start to jump into the snow season, the trees have snow on them. So this is one of the things that makes working with Twinmotion so nice, is the fact that everything has these smart materials kind of built into them. All right, so with that done, the next thing that we want to do is let's go ahead and jump back into our dock and jump into the lighting section, or into the location section, I'm sorry. And at any time you can adjust the time of day. It's all, again, procedurally driven from that sky system, so we can kind of get this kind of nice golden hour look there. You get this really nice little lens flare and bloom effects happening, all of that interacting with all the other materials in the scene, and it will accurately represent the sun based on the date and location and time. So, all the things that you need to do sun studies are kind of built in. So another thing that's kind of beautiful and newly added is the smog. So as we start to enter in some atmospheric effects or some smog effects, you can see that obviously it got a lot warmer, but we're also going to get these really nice little streaky God rays kind of coming through those trees as we kind of move through here. And you get a sense of how that bloom kind of burns around the trees, all that backlighting scattering effects as the sun's penetrating through that vegetation gives you this very, very highly realistic looking environment. And we're going to fly over here over toward where that Revit model is that we imported in, and we're going to go ahead and start to talk about a few more advanced things you can do with the look of your scene. So let's go ahead and drop the smog down, and let's get the sun a little bit higher in the sky, and get some shadows kind of coming across here. And we're going to add in a few more people into our scene. So we'll go back into the library and we'll just grab a couple groups of people over in this area. I'm going to kind of jump up really quickly and go to the single humans and just grab an animated character. So we'll grab this guy, Michael. We'll kind of position him and rotate him around. He's going to be our hero character that we're going to be kind of focusing in on. So we'll change his animation to something a little different, switch his shirt to a different color, and we're going to kind of frame in on him. So the next thing that we want to look at is, again, the main dock here is the camera. So we have a variety of different camera settings that we can use. So I'm going to add a little vignetting to kind of darken the edges of this, and we're going to adjust the field of view, get down to something in the 50s to give it a kind of little bit more depth of field when we turn that on. So by getting that camera lens, that field of view down to like something a little bit lower, once we enable the depth of field, which is very high fidelity here, we can jump into the more section and just click on the focus point. And now as I move my camera around, we're going to be auto-focusing in basically on this character's head. And it kind of just all this stuff works together, which is what makes working in Twinmotion so fun, is the ability to get this extremely highly realistic look very, very quickly. So let's turn that depth of field off and let's jump back into the library. And we're going to go down here into the tools section and we're going to look at notes. So notes were newly added. So I'm going to kind of just drop a note on here just saying, you know what, I think these doors should be open. And I got to spell this correctly. Let's go back and redo that ever so quickly. And the thing that's kind of cool about the notes is the notes can actually go back into Revit. So you can export this out as a BCF file. So here we are inside of Revit, and what I want to do is just change the property of that door from being closed to being open. And because we did this with a direct link, all I have to do is say C in Twinmotion, and you can see just like that, we've synchronized those changes, but we've kept all the work that we've done inside of Twinmotion, which is super, super powerful. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to import in another FBX file. So this is going to be just some mechanical information. And if we kind of drop down here below the ground, you can see we've got some representations of some electrical information or some mechanical information, maybe some piping or some electrical stuff. And what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm just turning on X-ray. So by enabling X-ray on the MEP, it will allow it to be visible through the ground. So as we kind of come over here, you get a really good sense of what's happening with the site and all the mechanicals based on what you can do with the X-ray, being able to see through it, which is pretty good. Now at any given time, you can always go back into your scene graph, and in the scene graph, you can disable the visibility of any object. So we can turn the MEP off or the notes off if you want to. So the next thing that we want to look at is a slightly more completed version of this. So this is the end result file. And at any given time, if you go up to the eyeball and click on the eyeball, you can always visualize it in VR, and you can also adjust the day of time. Pretty straightforward stuff there. Now on the dock, I've jumped into the media section, so we can have images, videos, or presenter files. So let's jump into images and talk about the creation of those really quickly. So I've already got a few of them set up here, and if you click on them, they basically take you to snapshots of the scene. You've recorded a state of that scene. Now, the difference between the back and the MEP is literally just the display of the visibility of it. So everything is recorded in that state or in that snapshot of that image. Now, the night image is really pretty interesting. So if we look at this one, what's going on is as the lights, the sun drops down, the lights basically turn on, pretty awesome. And what we're looking at is the contribution of the lighting. We're pull the exposure up right here. We're doing something that's pretty sophisticated and very new in both Unreal and Twinmotion, which is screen-based GI. So you can see that little bit of spill that incandescent object is introducing as I toggle it on and off, as well as the more realistic shading that's happening on that walkway based on that screen space GI. So really pretty awesome. And to make a new image is just a simple process. Like we'll start with the back image. I'll just kind of fly in here and frame up the people on the deck. And all I have to do is click the create image button to record that new pose. And I can easily just jump back and forth from back to the new image that we made. So the final thing that we want to do is to go ahead and generate a video. So let's just kind of jump back into our media and we'll jump into video. I've already got some videos in here. We're not going to be using those. So I'm going to create a new video. And this just basically is similar to making images. It's going to record snapshots or key poses that you basically set. So we've got our first pose that we created when we made the video. I'm just going to fly in here and sort of frame up on these cars as they kind of drive down the road. And once I get to a place that I like, all I have to do is click the plus button and I've now made a keyframe. So we now have a 10-second animation in between those two keyframes, which is pretty awesome. You can always click the more button and start to modify things like the time of day. So I can, make it go into the night or the morning. So we're going to kind of actually we'll go the other way and pull this back down. And we'll get sort of a low sun with that little golden light kind of coming through. The speck coming off the highway looks really nice. And now if we jump back to the video and we kind of scrub through it again, you can see that not only do we have the animated camera, but we are now doing a simulated time lapse of the sun wiping across that. Now, if I want to make a change to a position, all I have to do is move the camera to a new position and then just click the refresh button to record that or recapture that. So now you can see how easy it is to modify and make iterations of that. So the final thing that we want to talk about is the presenter mode. So I'm going to create a new presenter, and this allows me to basically take any images or videos that I've made and author them into a sequence. Think of this as PowerPoint on steroids. I'm just going to drag and drop all the different images that I've made, and I'm going to set them up in the order that I want to present to my client or to my user. And the presenter is going to be a standalone executable again. So what we have now is we basically just have 2 stills and a video. And if I hit play, this is what I could package up and mail off or send off to a client. They wouldn't need Twinmotion installed to experience this. And the thing that's great about this is it's not just a video. If we send someone a presenter file, it's going to be interactive. They can go in there and start to move their camera around or interact with this. And they're always going to be one click away from VR also when they're in presenter. So that's basically Twinmotion in 20 minutes. So yeah, I think we're going to do some Q&A now.
Real quick though, before we move on to that, we are having weekly webinars featuring Twinmotion every Friday at 1 p.m. starting on June 12th. There's also a promotional offer going on through IMAGINiT and Epic Games currently, and if you want more information about that, you can contact your IMAGINiT sales rep. And for other resources, additional videos and content about Twinmotion, you can visit the IMAGINiT Resources Center.